For some reason, one of the most dangerous and powerful creatures in the entire Lovecraft mythos goes unmentioned in almost every piece of media I see about him. This abomination is so powerful that even though it died almost 100 years ago, uttering its name can still destroy the career of any online creator. This creature is, of course, H.P. Lovecraft's cat. Even though a lot of Lovecraft's discriminatory ideology aged like spilled yogurt in a Florida parking lot, the monsters and some of the philosophy behind them are still pretty cool. Visualization of Lovecraft monsters is hard because many of them drive you completely mad when you look at them, but this art style is too goofy to scare anyone, and I'm already insane, so I think we'll be safe. First up is the Dunwich Horror. The Dunwich Horror was born from a human woman and a great old one by the name of Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth is a mass of glowing orbs covered in eyes and writhing with an uncountable amount of tendrils, some of which were, most likely, inside of an incredibly disturbed human woman. Unless you have a better idea of how these two did the deed. I mean, what other part of it would even go inside of where is beyond me. Anyways, the Dunwich Horror usually chooses to remain invisible. It can show itself, but when humans look upon the Dunwich Horror, they go completely insane. The Dunwich Horror is described as a monster around the size of a barn that's dotted with red eyes. It has many tentacles extending from its body, each ending in a mouth that contains razor-sharp teeth. It has a vaguely human-like face with a large mouth also overflowing with dagger-like teeth. It exudes a nauseating stench, and survives by draining cows of their blood before devouring them. Now this creature might be terrifying, and it might smell terrible, and also maybe it devours entire swarms of cattle in a series of seconds, and sure, it might drive you literally insane if you look at it from how horrifyingly disgusting it is. But I put up with lots of humans who have the exact same problems. I think the Dunwich Horror gets a bad rap. I mean, sure, it's a harmful monstrosity, but it never asked to exist on Earth. If we are to blame anyone for this, it is the family who encouraged the woman who watched too many naughty tentacle animes to act out her unholy urges in real life with an eldritch abomination. If the mother smoked, drank, and did lines of Colombian white during the pregnancy, you don't blame the baby for being a little bit off. I don't know, maybe that's a bad example. The story of the Dunwich Horror is actually quite tragic. Before the creature's death, its last words were a cry for help from its extraterrestrial father to be saved from a place with people that didn't understand it and punished it because of that. Who's the real barn-sized, horrible-smelling, cattle-devouring, tentacle-covered monstrosity? Now you just think about that. Well, that's pretty depressing, so let's lighten the mood with something really weird. Next on the list are the Children of the Sphinx. The Children of the Sphinx look like humans that have been Frankensteined together with different animals, appearing often as a human with an animal head. They are created from human and animal mummies being mixed and matched like bionicles before being affected by a very powerful magic called suspension of disbelief, which reanimated them. These abominations worship the Sphinx, and that's pretty much the sum of what they do with their existence. Fun fact, the creation of the Children of the Sphinx was partially attributed to Harry Houdini, the legendary escape artist that could escape anything but his own appendix. No, I don't think it was too soon, it was almost 100 years ago. This is Yagalanak the Defiler. Yagalanak's day job is being the god of perversion and depravity. It is a sadistic old one that enjoys making humanity suffer. This old one is from an unknown ruin in an unknown place. While it doesn't always have a physical form, it for some reason chooses to manifest as a morbidly obese mass of a man with no head and mouths with long tongues in each palm. So,
What that mouth do?
I'm cringing too, but come on, you can't not make that joke. When summoned, he either offers a job to the summoner to be one of his evil priests, or just consumes them as food. Yagalanak often looks for people who read perverse and forbidden literature to become his servants. So if this monstrosity kept up with the times and got into other media as it developed, I'll see you degenerates in his army. Next up is the great race of Yilth. This alien species is capable of projecting their consciousness across space and time, and they can even swap minds with members of their own species and steal the bodies of other species. If humanity had this ability, I guarantee all people would be doing would be playing musical chairs with each other's bodies to do disturbing things with each other's bits, and nothing would get done. This isn't a problem for the Yilth though, because they reproduce with seeds that grow into another Yilth when in contact with water. Their original forms are unknown, and at some point they swapped bodies with this species species that was on prehistoric Earth, and created a huge civilization governed under what is described as fascistic socialism on the planet. They were eventually forced to project their minds into an insectoid species to avoid being wiped out by the next monstrosity on our list, the flying polyps. The polyps are very mysterious, because the records kept by the Yilth only told us how icky and scary they are, but for some reason they didn't describe their physiology very well. They are described as polyps, which are like a kinda sea anemone, so I guess they're like a flying, evil, tendrily, fleshy, mouthy, eyeball-y sea anemone? I could say how they look quite phallic, but that's kind of a low-hanging fruit. While they can fly, they don't show any wings or any other body parts that would typically allow a creature to get in the air, and they leave many five-toed radial footprints wherever they go. Next up is Cthulhu. Cthulhu is a planet-sized sphere made entirely from organs. It's quite moist, and covered in these weird warty pulstals. Apparently, every one of these tiny pulstals is a gestation chamber that's developing a baby old one. I know old one just means being of a great power from an ancient source in this mythos, but the words baby old one just makes me imagine a really wrinkly old man baby. Most often when one thinks of a fertility god, they think of Aphrodite, but Lovecraft's idea of symbolizing fertility is a giant insectoid-esque egg sac. It's kind of common knowledge that he projected himself into his work, so like, I'm really curious what Lovecraft was into. Like, what got his motor running? Like, what made his cream expel at great speed out of his cock? The next entity is possibly the most abstract of all of the abominations in the Lovecraftian mythos. It is the blackness between the stars itself, a literal conscious nothingness that observes all of the universe with a sense of cold indifference. This being rarely chooses to communicate, but when it does communicate, it speaks in a language only it can comprehend. I know what you're thinking, did you only cover this one because you could draw it just by using one color and a paint bucket tool? No, that's not the only reason, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't one of them. I couldn't make something on Lovecraft without mentioning the face of the mythos, so let's talk about Cthulhu. Cthulhu is often described as an unholy amalgamation of human, dragon, and octopus. This lumbering beast is said to be the size of a mountain. Cthulhu is currently in a deep sleep at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and he dreams of the day that he will awake to subjugate all of humanity. That's some big goals, Squiddy. You can't fault this guy. He's just a boy with a dream, damn it. He has an incredibly devoted and extensive cult of followers that devote their lives to bringing about his awakening. He's even run for office in multiple satirical political campaigns. Needless to say, he is someone who I aspire to be like one day and take great inspiration from. Lovecraft encouraged people to collaborate and add to his mythos, so while some of these creatures may have been created by Lovecraft himself, a good amount of them were from other authors who contributed. In that spirit, I would like to add my own creature to the mythos. In the spirit of Lovecraft, I'm gonna make it unpronounceable, and if you want, you can decide on spelling on your own, because I don't care. This is... and it is the love child of Yagalanak the Defiler and H.P. Lovecraft's cat. It is an overweight neckbeard with anime cat girl ears and a tail that spends its day on internet message boards making jokes about things that I would get canceled just for mentioning in this context. Well, I was deciding between that and a large, consistently growing mass of still living and conscious organisms that have had their flesh, skin, and organs fused together, trapping them as one large being from going from planet to planet, absorbing all living creatures into its own mass, growing exponentially and therefore needing more to feed it. It has its own consciousness, and it also has access to all of the nervous systems of all of the beings it assimilates into its own mass. So it tortures them with their greatest fears, playing out on repeat, while it slowly dissolves their physical form into a million other alien beings over eternity. Yeah, so that's definitely a tie. I can't think of which is more horrifying from these two. If you like this video, please subscribe, drop me a like, and comment, or else. I want to thank Supik for drawing the Fat Hand Man, and also this thing. I'd also like to thank AzFk for drawing this flying, tendrily, mouthy, eyeball-y sea anemone that doesn't look like anything inappropriate, YouTube. They've both helped me before on videos, so you may have seen their art style before. I'll be linking both of their pages in the end cards. By the way, I want to thank my community for being so supportive. With the nice comments and the likes and the showing up for every video, I know the metrics are just kind of transactional now because of how YouTube works, but they really do help grow is make more and better things. I can honestly say that I wouldn't be grinding this hard if as many people weren't watching. And there go my neighbor's noise machine again, the famous neighbor's noise machine. But I already finished with the live action parts, and I'm not even wearing pants under this desk. So I'm not gonna wait for it to end. As always, like, sub, and hit the bell, and we will definitely see them in hell. Okay, bye.
It's down white, boy.